Welcome back to Kevin Pollak's Chat Show. This is the 30th day of May in the year 2010. Where the hell are you? We are in Santa Monica, California. Welcome, one and all. We're very excited today. I'm thrilled to know when with our choice of guest and the fact that he said yes. We'll get to that in a moment. First, however, a couple of things. I remember. It was a gathering a while back that I told you all about at the UCB Theater in Hollywood, California, to raise some money to build a school in Haiti. It was called Night of 140 Tweets, and a bunch of allegedly funny folk got together and either read tweets out loud that they had written or acted them out or Skyped them in or pre-recorded and sent them in. We threw mine up way back when I had to shoot mine from a location and send it in. Anyways, turns out they successfully raised $50,000, which for one night in a theater that holds about 11 people is pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. And also, as it turns out in Haiti, $50,000 is all it costs to build an entire school. So they were greatly successful in that regard. And I think we just put up the lower third there telling you where you can go to check out a poster that everyone signed, which I thought was pretty cool. Everyone that participated signed this poster. There you go. Check out stillerstrong.org for the poster, and also to follow up on all the other ways that you can still help if you'd like build some schools and whatnot in Haiti. So I just wanted to lay that out there because they send us an email and say, hey, we did good. So I wanted to pass that along to you because I had nudged you about participating. Vamped Out, the wonderful little web series that a lot of us here worked on. All 6 episodes now available at yourbabblegum.com to watch one after another. They rolled them out 1 week at a time, and thankfully that nonsense is over, and now you can just watch all 6 in a row. So there you have that. Very excited tonight as, hey, look at that. That looked fantastic. Did you see what happened there?
I did not.
Wow, it looked really cool. I went black and white, and now, how's the input signal? Is that our monitor or the rest of the world? They won't let me know until it's too late. Okay, terrific. It always is just my monitor.
I think that's what happens when you get older. You actually go black and white right before you die. I really think that's true.
That would be nice. That would be perfect, actually. So, okay, on my monitor anyways, we had a little black and white issue. Not that I mind at all. So Ask Kevin is a new feature on the show. I believe we have some sort of graphic for that, for the Ask Kevin, do we not?
Ask Kevin.
Look at that ridiculousness.
Ask Kevin.
Right? Now, before I get to the Ask Kevin, no, I'm going to go ahead and do the Ask Kevin, and then we'll come over to Sammy and Jamie and see what's up in that corner of the world. This one comes to us from A.G. Belcher, 76. I don't know if that's a Twitter name or what have you. He writes, hello there. And then that was it. Interesting. No, there's more. I stumbled upon your show about a month ago while I was looking on iTunes. I must say I'm glad I subscribed. All the guests you've had on on the show are so great. Currently, I am deployed to Kuwait and have been here since January of '09. Had I known about the show since then, it would have made my time a lot better. Well, thank you for that. Your show brings me a great amount of pleasure and helps the days go by quicker. Nice. I just wanted to say you're all doing a fabulous job. Keep up the good work. Now for the question. Yeah, seriously, because I was wondering if there was a Have you or do you think you would ever go on a USO tour? Have I? No. Would I? Oh, okay. My guest last week, Greg Proops, has been on many. We spoke about it, and I confessed, as I had maybe a time before that I had been just a huge wuss with the notion of being funny a few clicks up the road from exploding things. But after speaking to him, you know, he made it quite clear that I was being ridiculous. I have sent things, comedy CDs and what have you, in big, giant boxes fulls to lend whatever support I could, and then I, of course, performed on some bases here in the States. But I had not made the trip to the line, as it were. So, AJ Belcher 76, I put it on you. Get me the information how I can be a part of a USO tour. Do some research, damn it, instead of watching the chat show and defending the great people of Kuwait. Yeah, so anyways, I turned the corner on this. I'm ready to be a part of the whole USO tour, and I can't wait. And I will report back to you and everyone else should that actually, should they have me. This one from Paul. I just was wondering if there were any plans to have Pope Benedict on the show.
Again?
There's more. So he can tell his version of the joke, The Aristocrats. His timing may be spot on, but his use of a platypus is actually quite disturbing. So apparently Paul has seen the Pope tell his version of The Aristocrats. You know what? If in fact you're telling the truth that the Pope tells a great version of that, I would have him on. Otherwise, we'd been saying no. But I wasn't aware of his version of The Aristocrats. So if anyone can send me on a USO tour and get me the Pope, please. And then the third one, Ask Kevin, is from James B. Hanna, who writes, big fan of the show and your career. That's confusing. Could you tell us anything more about the movie you are currently shooting? Well, thank you, and keep up the great shows, JB. At present, of course, I'm shooting this. But yes, I did begin work on a wonderful comedy called The Big Year. I can tell you that. It's titled The Big Year. And the Jack Black, Owen Wilson, Steve Martin, Diane Wiest, Joel McHale, Rashida Jones, Steven Weber, Brian Dennehy, one of Jamie's favorites, Joe Beth Williams. A never-ending cast, apparently. None of those people are in the movie. I just like saying their names. It's called The Big Year. Those are people that are in it, and it's a big, splashy comedy. And I'm having a lot of fun. And David Frankel, who directed Devil Wears Prada, is at the helm on this one as well. What else can I tell you? It's about a group of people who are devoted bird watchers, and every year there's an event called The Big Year, wherein you must videotape or photograph your collection of how many birds you spotted in 1 year's time, and it's a big contest. And these people come from all over the land and participate in this event, and doesn't it just sound hilarious? I'm not afraid. All right. Sammy, Jamie, yeah. I come over to you for a little camera time. You, the helpful members of this Kevin Pollak's chat show team. Jamie seems hard at work forwarding us some questions, which she will. Would you like to say anything, Jamie, so that Sammy has an opportunity to interrupt you?
How dare you?
It actually happened.
No.
Sammy?
She wasn't saying anything. You know, I see a lot of birds, mostly when I'm driving, though. Terrible joke. I tell you this. So the American Idol finale.
Yeah, oh, were you there?
No, I was with you bowling that night. Remember?
Oh, that's right.
Kicking your ass.
You were there busy taking $50 American from me.
50 US dollars.
Yes.
Out of your pocket into mine.
Most of it not counterfeit.
But I do have a little photo that I'd like to put up if we could.
Oh.
There you go. That's your winner right there.
That's the gentleman
That's Lee DeWise, your winner of American Idol. Now, I took that photo with him at the Top 24 party earlier this season.
Did you?
When I said, I'm going to back this horse.
Did you? Was this a photograph or an illustrator from a courtroom?
This is. No, that is a photograph. That is a photograph.
Okay, all right. That's the winner, and it was the lowest rating in the history of the show.
Yes, but that's not what we're talking about.
Oh, it isn't. So, would you like to lay claim because you were?
What I'm saying, and I put this in tweet form, is I'm not saying that by taking that picture with him, I caused him to win.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not going to say it didn't cause him to win.
I see. So you're going to take some of the credit.
I'm going to take a little credit for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So.
And who else have you had this sort of effect on?
Well, let's see. Clay Aiken, but that was a very different experience long before Idol.
And certainly no photographs that you know of.
No, Lord, no. And Paula Abdul and I once had a thing, a little tryst down in Mexico, but that was
Oh, you're
Well,
on
it
a
was
long.
actually, it was a three-way. It was us and MC Scat Cat.
You're on a long list there, my
But,
friend. Don't feel too much pride. on
all
that one.
right.
Yeah. All right. Well, God bless.
Yeah, I just want to say congrats to Lita Wise. He's a hell of a singer. And also Crystal Bowersox, fine singer. I'm sure they'll both go on to middle of the road, great careers.
There's the thing about second place on that show that you end up doing remarkably well,
Sometimes.
right?
Sometimes. Or sometimes it doesn't matter if you finish first. None of you do well.
What year was this? 10th, 9th?
This was the 9th season, I believe.
9th season.
Yeah, Jordan Sparks. You ever heard that name? Didn't think so. She won.
Wow.
I can't even tell you who came in second. that
Anyone
year.
else you want to slam?
No. No, I'm just saying there are
Because
some
we had
times
Jordan
where-
Sparks all lined up to be on the show.
Ooh, this
Now,
is
not so
awkward
much.
for her now. Well, you know, it's anyone's guess
All right.
as to how it's going to turn out afterward.
Yeah, and no more Simon Cowell. Let's pause for a moment of silence and celebration. Jamie, nothing? Speaking of silence, all right, she's going to do the.
Not even a word.
She's going to do the paid extra bit.
You
where-
unmiked it. Everything. You unmuted yourself.
That's what you get, Sammy. All right. Thank you, guys. My guest has been kind enough to sit there in recluse and silence.
Relative silence.
Relative silence for the opening, as we were apt to do. We have one last thing, I guess. We played the Larry King game here on the show with the guest, which we will end today's broadcast thusly, as always. But we encourage you, our lovely viewers, most of you, to record your own damn Larry King game, remembering the rules, bad Larry King impression, reveal something about yourself as Larry revealing something about himself, and then go to the phones. And this one, we just got through an email that we're going to throw up now from what appears to be a teenager doing a Larry King game. Do we have that, fellas?
All right, my entry to the Larry King game. Larry King here. I have had the same hemorrhoid in the middle of my ass since I was 15. Doesn't get bigger or smaller. Sometimes it gets angry. Climax, Alabama, you're on.
That's good. That's nice. That's nice. We thank you for that. And I don't know where your parents were when you did that, but thank you for your effort. And each and every one of you who should choose to record one of those for us, if we show it on the show, we're going to send you a lovely T-shirt, which I normally would hold up right now, but I think we put it in a gift bag for our guest from the Kevin Pollak's chat. So whoever that fine young person was who just did that Larry King game, please email us again with your address and size for the Kevin Pollak's Chat Show T-shirt, and we'd be happy to send one to you. All right, then. Now for today's formal introduction, which aren't normally this formal, but here we go. For fans of original works of art, you know my guest has had his paintings on display in solo as well as group exhibitions here and abroad for 4 decades. For fans of late 1980s television, you know he became very popular as Roseanne Connor's boss, Leon Karp, or just prior to that success as the co-creator and host of the satirical documentary, The History of White People in America, which was cited in 1985 by Time magazine as one of the best shows on television. In the mid-1970s, however, if, like me, you were too young to get into nightclubs, there were very few ways to discover a new stand-up comedian. You youngsters have heard tell of comedians appearing on television's The Ed Sullivan Show, or showcased by that white-haired guy who hosted The Tonight Show before Leno. But the best way to truly discover new comedians of the mid-70s was an archaic ritual that involved feeding an enormous round object into your parents' largest piece of furniture, known as a high-fidelity stereo. This eyesore was 100 times larger than the radio they grew up on, and 1,000 times larger than the iPod Nano you currently enjoy. If, like me, you were buying these comedy albums specifically in 1977, then you know that my guest's Grammy-nominated effort titled I'm Everyone I Ever Loved and Steve Martin's Let's Get Small, released the same year, literally changed the way we thought about stand-up comedians. In preparation for today's chat, in fact, I spoke to as many comedy fans my age as I could find, and all 4 of us agreed. These comedy albums would have as a profound effect on stand-up comedy that year as George Carlin's Class Clown had in the year 1972, or Richard Pryor's That Nigger's Crazy in 1974. Also in 1977, while Steve Martin was about to host Saturday Night Live, my guest segued from one of the most revolutionary television comedy series ever, Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman, to host the single most original, hilarious late-night talk show called Fernwood Tonight. Once again, if you were a fan of alternative comedy, I assure you, consistently more inventive and funny than what was happening on SNL was this nightly, purposely lame, subtly hysterical half-hour talk show, co-hosted by the equally nutty genius Fred Willard. If you were at all like me, coming of age in the late 70s, between his stand-up albums and his implausible talk show, my guest today would forever skew and ultimately inform your comedic point of view. It is with that over-explained prelude to a chat and risk of finally succumbing to the tone and over-the-top pronouncements of that blowhard James Lipton that I ask you to fathom my level of happiness as I say, please welcome my guest, Martin Mull.
Thank you. God, what a litany of things.
I am so sorry. I have never put together a page like that, and I don't know what got into me.
I would like to have that for my Christmas card to send out. You know, one of those, what's the family been up to for the last 50 years? Kind of thing.
Right, yeah, yeah. I was thinking, well, he's probably going to say, why did we have to take that tour down memory lane? But there you go. I was inspired and couldn't stop writing.
Well, thank you.
Sure. No, thank you.
Took my mind off what I've been thinking about ever since the beginning of the show, and that is the idea of you and I and Pope Benedict all doing a USO tour and just telling the aristocrats joke.
One after the other.
Yeah, the three of us. Let him open.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Because he probably goes to bed earlier.
Yeah. But I wouldn't want the problem of following him, I think, would
This
be
is true.
Yeah.
Millions do.
As it were.
Yeah.
Misguided.
Yeah.
Each and every damn one of them. Well, first of all, thank you so much.
My pleasure. This is great.
Very, very excited. I don't know how much of the show you've had a chance to see, but it's very relaxed here. We involve the audience watching. Jamie is going to be forwarding their question to us, so we'll break away to
This is the mute
laptop.
over in the other. Yeah.
Yes. We had an incident last Sunday where she attempted to be funny, and well, it's not important.
This is out of hand.
Out of hand.
It's getting out of hand.
Yes. I should also mention that you're in the new Ashton Kutcher film Killers.
Right.
I don't mean to suggest how wildly talented you once were. I want to make a point of that. And also, you've done some work with someone who has been on this show, Seth MacFarlane. I'm a huge fan of. Mm-hmm. You do voice work for him.
Right. I play the Reverend on American Dad.
Oh, boy. Love that like crazy.
Yeah, that's the most fun doing that because, first of all, they animate after you do the voice. I mean, so you're not doing it to picture. It's not like looping or ADR. So whatever you come up with, they say, fine, just go with it. And you don't have to shave or anything. It's wonderful.
Is there much freedom when
they
you
give me
record?
enough rope to hang myself.
Do they?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's nice.
That is nice because I've heard often that you stick to the script.
Well, ordinarily they'll let me hang myself as much as possible and then ultimately come back to what was written.
I see.
And prefer their own writing to whatever I've done. But they give me at least enough time so I feel like I'm actually earning the money.
Well, that's just it. You want to feel like, well, money aside, that you actually contributed.
Yeah.
What you bring to it.
If you're going to validate parking, at least let me be here 20 minutes.
Now, do you know there's something else you and Seth MacFarlane have in common? You must know. I'm sure the two of you have discussed it.
We're alumni of the Rhode Island School of Design.
Right. Where you picked up a bachelor's and a master's, according to your dossier.
Yeah, I have the, I don't know where they are. I don't know whether either of those, a lot of people, I guess if you're a doctor, you frame it, you put it right on the wall, Schmidlap University and everything, and it's right up there. And I often wonder with the doctors too, don't you assume when you see the shingle from Harvard or whatever, that the guy got A's?
Yes, foolishly.
Yeah. I mean, it could all be C's, but at any rate, I don't know where mine are. But I have them.
I graduated college in 9 months, so I don't. Well, it's called dropping out to most people, but I don't know.
Got what you needed.
I did.
Yeah.
Which was an exit. I don't know. I don't know what it's like to have that. So the idea that you don't know where yours are, I find enjoyable.
Well, what happened was I was in art school during, just toward the end of my undergraduate, was when the Vietnam War was really going crazy, and the idea of getting a student deferment was really what everybody wanted, because I felt no urge to become part of what I thought was a very bad situation. But so the idea of going right into master's school was
Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
That was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah, and then when that was over, I was terrified because I found out there was no doctorate.
Well, in a pinch, you are just a few miles from Canada.
Yeah, exactly,
At that point.
exactly.
So, well, let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, first of all, about a lot of times on the show, it's really about the journey, how one got from there to here. So I'm often curious, at what point in your life is the notion of standing in front of people and being entertaining entering your mind? But prior to that, I'm curious about the art. And I remember a time in my life where there was a friend in school, I must have been 8 or 9 years old, who could freehand draw kind of an animated form, but he was drawing ideas. He wasn't just he wasn't recreating other cartoons in any way, but actually little scenes that depicted ridiculous moments of thought. And so I got caught up in that a little bit. And I remember showing it to my mom and her saying, we need to take these to a psychiatrist. This is very, very telling. What were your early inclinations in regards to your artwork?
Well, I grew up in a very, very small kind of agrarian reform situation outside of Cleveland. There was a school that was so small, for instance, that we had a 6-man football team.
No, you didn't.
Yes, we did.
Would you compete?
No, I was.
Not you, but the team.
The team would compete against other schools in the area that were also 6-man, but it was extremely lackluster, corn-fed, and the term white trash is bandied about a lot, but I think it probably would apply to not only us and a lot of people. Anyway, so the only art I knew about at that time was basically the occasional Saturday evening Post cover and illustrations on the Wheaties box and things like that. And so my early stuff was more just trying to figure out how they did that and the kind of cartooning that any child does. And I somewhere have a book that I did after going to the zoo on a field trip where I drew all the animals. I mean, but it was kind of nothing extraordinary except I knew I loved it. And
something was drawing you to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a way of leaving the room for a while.
Was that it? Because I was just about to ask, what do you have any ideas looking back on it? Probably not at the time. Or did you think, oh God, if I just can get out of here?
It was probably at that point in time, it was exactly the same overriding kind of mistress, if you will, that drives me now. And that is that every now and then, and it's more then than now, you will do something that is almost alchemical in nature. You will actually do something that you can't do. And you, oh, look at that.
Right.
And that is the drug of choice.
Yes.
That drives you to the next one. That's the golfer hitting the hole-in-one with the same ball and the same iron he did on the last hole. Why didn't it happen again? Right. And you keep going. And I think that happened very, very early on.
Really?
Yeah.
What age are we talking?
7, 8.
Oh, my God. You were shocking yourself with what was coming out of the...
Yeah, and then I would just do the typical things on terrible canvas board that I would get someplace. I remember doing a painting of a tiger that was just awful.
What was awful about it?
Oh, it was just so horribly done and ham-fisted. And then I spent like 3 months once on a piece of shirt cardboard, oil painting. I actually got a little oil painting set from the hobby shop, doing a portrait of Hermione Gingold. Now, I have... Kevin, if you ask me why, all I remember was that she had one eye kind of raised up in that Gingoldian kind of stare.
As it's referred to.
Yeah, and it fascinated me, and I just kept trying to get it right. And for months I worked on this thing, sitting in my little room, painting Hermione Gingold.
And how's it going to this day?
I don't know where that picture is, but I'd love to have it.
Probably with your diplomas. Okay, so you find yourself entering a pretty respected art school, as it was explained to us by Seth MacFarlane anyways. And is the notion here when you enter this institution that this is your career path? Is it becoming that sort of focused?
I don't think I thought in terms of a career. I'll tell you what the overwhelming feeling of going to art school was, that I had come from northern Ohio. Again, as I tell you, from this kind of agrarian situation where people had horses and cows, and where kids would go to school wearing their jeans and their work boots and maybe the slight aroma of manure, just a little bit, you know, and that kind of thing.
Just enough.
A lot of big billowy coats and that kind of stuff. And then we moved to Connecticut, to New Canaan, Connecticut, where the kids were actually driving a Mercedes, their own, not daddy's, their own, to school. And they had these perfect little Shetland sweaters with perfectly white starched collars, and they were all so rich and famous and so forth, that I was terrified.
Oh, my.
Terrified. And then when I finally went on to art school, I walked in, and there were people in dirty jeans and work boots with big puffy overcoats and everything. And I thought, oh, thank God, you know, the other was a bad dream, that I'm back home again. So I just felt, I would say that I was basically reborn or reinvented or whatever in art school. It just changed everything.
Right. Not just the clothing and the mentality or whatnot, but was there a likeness of creative spirit there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just that what you're doing is not totally removed from humanity, that there are other people involved in the same thing, and you could actually talk about it and see what they're doing, and they would look at what you're doing. And it was just remarkable. That, plus it was the generation in the 60s of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And if you were in art school in the 60s, do the math.
It was in the curriculum. It was in the curriculum.
It was, indeed.
Literally, yeah. You didn't have to go into the hallways or near your locker.
No.
It was actually in the class.
In the classroom.
Oh, my. And your dossier suggests that you sort of...
I didn't know I had a dossier.
Oh, yes, my friend.
Okay.
Is
there anything I can take for that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there is, actually. We have that in your dossier.
Okay, good.
What you can actually... The anecdote. Did I say anecdote?
You did.
I did.
Which in itself is actually a play on words.
Yeah.
We're talking about his
I did
dossier.
it on purpose then.
Yeah.
It
talking
suggests
about
that
Arby's.
you... What?
It speaks.
Now you have our attention. What was that?
Yes.
That's what I don't know why we were talking about Arby's in the chat room. You know me and Arby's.
Oh, Arby's, of course. Wow. You will bubble up an Arby's commenter at no notice at all, and I do love that about you. But you stumbled into stand-up comedy by way of maybe just raising some funds. That you were putting together some shows, some live shows. While attending school, he organized bands as a means of paying his tuition.
Yeah.
Is such a thing possible?
Well, yeah. I've often said publicly that I was, as far as getting into the business, I was wandering aimlessly down the sidewalk of life and stepped into show business.
Yeah.
But
Which doesn't
more
come off the bottom of
accurately
your
was
shirt.
I did not have the proverbial two nickels to rub together when I was in school. And this was a period of, in the 60s, which I've always called the great folk music scare of the 60s.
Yes, it was.
And so, like everybody in the world, you know, I played guitar and grew my hair and so forth and put bands together. And I did the ubiquitous Hold On, I'm Coming, Knock on Wood, and all those kind of things. I was the guitar player in the band. And that was what kept me in basically beer, cigarettes, in my $35 a month apartment.
Right.
It had to. I mean, there was nothing else coming in. So when the master's degree finally was done, and there was no doctorate, and I had to actually have gainful employment if I was going to eat. The only thing I really knew how to do other than paint and draw, which I was still and am still in the process of learning, was to go out and play music. And at that time I had been writing a few songs, and they were not typical songs. This was also, again, during the folk music thing, which I just found horrible, and the protest song thing, which I had one protest song once I did called Stop the War or I Won't Stop Singing, which was kind of so I just would write these kind of odd little songs. There were songs about a guy who had married a midget, and there was a song about a woman who was missing her ring finger and would never do anything sexual until she had a ring on her finger and had no finger to have one on. It said it was a rumba. And I used to do these little songs, and people liked them, so I started doing those live. And the thing is, I was such, and am still, a dreadful singer that I would go into
Also in your dossier.
Yeah, would go into these long-winded explanations before the song and apologies after that turned into an act over the years. And
Right.
all of a sudden I found myself making a living.
So it sort of wrote itself on stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing was ever written off stage.
And there was always a sense of what you just described, which clearly evolved, as you say, into the act. But I remember there was a sense of it which was not just sort of loose and conversational, but also, and not self-deprecating in a way that we were accustomed to.
Mm-hmm.
It was a more a sense of comedic edge and intelligence that wasn't a part of the stand-up patter at that time.
Right.
And so,
It was a character.
yeah, that's what well, one of the things I was going to ask was something that you, because to the fan, the audience, it seems like you're just allowing yourself to be. And so my question was, being a performer all these years, had you in fact created a persona to sort of hide behind so you didn't have to be yourself?
Oh, I think very much so.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, because what I was unequipped. I had never studied music or theater or anything like that, so I was basically, pull the curtain back and there's the wizard. I mean, this shriveled up little old man.
Right.
And so I had this other guy. Plus, I had always just been inordinately fond of people that I would refer to as aggressively stupid. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what this character was. He was people that are urgently uninformed.
Yes.
And have an opinion about themselves that is so much greater than the sum of its parts, and the overachiever, et cetera. And that was kind of what I wanted to kind of couch all of this persona in that kind of a situation.
Yeah, which
and it seemed to work for me. So.
Well, that was certainly represented in the Fernwood.
Well, Fernwood would basically borrowed rather freely from my live act.
Clearly.
Yeah, because I used to also have the same, the cheesy, shitty furniture that was in Fernwood.
Oh,
we
God.
just had, the set was $38 anywhere. And
34. But
yeah. Oh, it's
table.
gone down?
This table.
Oh. But that came from my live act, because I used to go out with my furniture. And the reason for that was when I was playing in these bands, Knock on Wood and Hold On I'm Coming and Soul Man. It was back in the 60s again, where if you remember how the Beatles used to line up, they'd be spread over about 30 yards on stage, and each one in front of an amplifier about 15 yards apart, and the amplifiers were the size of this wall.
Right.
And you would stand there, and basically what it was a tinnitus farm. You would just sit there, and by the end, you would have Big Ben going off like crazy, etc. And it was just not fun. You couldn't hear the other guy play. You couldn't hear this. You couldn't hear yourself. And then at the end of that evening, I would go back to my little tiny cold water place and have something that would enhance my mood, a beer or something like that. And maybe another fellow would come over with his guitar and we'd sit and play, and all of a sudden it felt like music. We're actually playing, and I thought, I see the difference.
Yeah.
Furniture. So from that day forward, I had an old Ford Pinto station wagon. I would load up as much of my living room furniture as I could and take it to the gig.
Reading lamp and a high wingback chair.
Absolutely, and a little end table
Right.
and a radio sometimes.
And what was the club owners thinking when you would lug this out on stage?
They didn't quite know what to make of it, because I was also always dressed in a suit and tie.
Yep.
And so they didn't know whether I was there to go over the books or what, and then the furniture. Then when I started touring outside of a 30-mile radius,
Yes.
I would put in the rider of the contract, please have one of your people go to the Salvation Army. This is the kind of chair I want. This is the kind of table. And they actually, I think, they did it, but I think they thought
For the
I was
most part,
nuts. Yeah.
it showed up. It was there.
Yeah.
And so it begs the question of, did the inevitable take place where, although it was in your rider, you must have played some shows where they just couldn't find the furniture?
Never.
Really?
No. They always came through with the goods.
That's ridiculous.
And if they didn't, I would get there enough during the day to take a quick trip down to the Sally Army and get what I needed.
Right.
But I can't remember a time when they didn't actually comply.
That's pretty extraordinary.
Pretty nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like only the brown M&Ms. It wasn't that kind of backstage kind of thing,
How did you expand beyond the 30-mile radius that you speak of? I mean, was it just a matter of allowing yourself to be to book yourself? I mean, was there someone who came through your neck of the woods and said, you've got to take this on the road?
No, it was a very interesting time, at least for a musician, because the situation, the catch-22 was, if you went to a record company and you said, look, here's my tape, I'd like to do a record, they would, the first thing out of their mouth would be, do you have a large following in your area? And you're playing a lot of clubs. And you go, well, not really, no. And so you go to the clubs and you say, listen, can I play? They say, do you have a record?
Yeah.
Well, not really, no. so you'd have to go back, and no one would book you without a record. No one would make you a record without booking.
Yeah.
So what happened was I was with a manager who had one act. It was a guy named Jonathan Edwards who had a song called Sunshine, da 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 da, Sunshine, big hit, for Capricorn Records.
Oh my.
And he managed to cajole the heads of Capricorn to come see my band live. They came in and they said afterward that it was the worst thing they'd ever heard. What a waste of time. Meanwhile, I had sent them a tape to cover it, and it turned out it's just the sound system was so bad in this place. That's why they hated it. They even said, why didn't you send us to see the guy on that tape? That's more like it. We're interested in that. At which point he had to explain that was the guy you went and saw. And they, kind of on Jonathan's coattails, I did my first album. And as luck would have it, it did rather well.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
It got radio play?
A lot of radio play. That was in the day of the heavy pot-smoking underground radio, you know.
Sure.
So if anything that was the least bit obtuse or arcane or whatever, or odd, or they felt was, you know, dope-derived or whatever, they would play the hell out of it. So,
And that was enough to put you on tour?
Pretty much.
And was it this time that you started you did some opening engagements with Frank Zappa?
I did one with Frank.
Just one?
Just one down in...
It made it into your dossier.
Oh, it did?
Yes.
Oh, down in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, the Armadillo World Headquarters.
That's
Austin's
right.
Armadillo World
That's
Headquarters.
right.
What the hell is that? Is that the name of the venue?
It was an outdoor, almost like an outdoor kind of German beer garden or something like that in the middle of Austin. And as I recall, it was around 172 degrees that day. It was really pretty grand, but it was an extraordinary band he had. It was an amazing man.
Did you get much of a chance to, I guess, one show? You're not going to get to know the guy too
Hanging
well.
with Frank?
Yeah.
No, I did not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's one of the other drags about being a working musician is you would go into, let's say I go into Chicago tonight, and I'm doing a gig. I also find out that Kevin Pollak is doing his live show at the Lyceum and that Steve Martin's over at the da-da-da-da. Do you get a chance to see them? No.
No.
Because you're doing your own thing, and the next morning your roadie says, you know, we got to be out of here at 6.
Yeah. Yeah. No, really.
That's exactly it. So you never see anybody.
I once did a mini tour across Canada. It was the 20th anniversary of the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival from Montreal. And they did this nationwide tour, and there were 6 of us, I think, maybe 7. And it was the first time that I ever traveled with a gang of comedians for 14 dates, 14 different theaters that we played. And it was the first time I felt that Band of Brothers essence in what I'd been doing all my life.
Yeah.
And boy, I love that.
Yeah.
I never did travel with a band, music-wise, so I had always been fascinated by the camaraderie and whatnot.
It was great.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are, as the British say, your mates.
Yeah.
They are.
Right.
And the only comedy tours I did, Steve Martin and I did a bunch of shows together, and we've become and are still very good friends because of that. That was a lot of fun.
You guys did shows together. How did you find each other through?
Just it was an accident of booking, you know, that I would be the opening act and Steve would close. I think the first place we played was down in the Great Southeast Music Hall in Atlanta, Georgia, and I recall. I'll never forget, his reputation preceded him with me. You know, I had seen him on the Smothers Brothers show and things like that, and I was very impressed with the man. So that when I was coming down the corridor backstage in our dressing room area, I'll call it dressing rooms. They knew I loved tar paper. And I'm walking down there, and I'm walking by this guy sitting there tuning his banjo, and it's Steve. And I literally could not think of anything to say as I walked by him. I didn't even say hello or anything. I got about 4 steps past, and he said, "Oh, pretty good. How are you?" And at which point I started laughing, and we just became fast friends ever since.
Oh, that's
It was
nice.
amazing. But after that concert, remember, we both rushed around front, he with his banjo, me with my guitar, and put our hats down on the ground and made an extra $3 doing busking. It was a lot of fun.
Oh my God! But you did a series of shows together.
Yeah,
Ultimately.
we did a little, like
Over
every
a few
now and then.
years.
Yeah, maybe a dozen or so. Yeah.
Is this before or after this all-important year of '77 that I mentioned? Must have been before, when you guys were doing shows together.
I think it was before. Yeah, that was about 1970. I think 72. I did my first show with Steve.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Because I mentioned the '77, which is when "I'm Everyone I've Ever Loved" and
Right.
and his "Let's Get Small" came out the
Yeah,
same.
I think
year.
he won the Grammy.
That year, yes.
Yes, and I didn't. And the next year, I think I got nominated for Best Album Design.
That's got to make you feel good.
Yeah, and then the year after that, I knew it was going to be Best Shrink Wrap, and so I decided to just summarily jump out of the business at that point. I quit.
All right. Well, let's. If you don't want to tell you what, maybe we should include our fine folk.
If he's listening.
Yes. This actually is perfectly timed because I was about to ask about first Mary Hartman and then Fernwood Tonight. And this at Rocker Prod from the Twitterverse is asking, what was it like working with Fred Willard back in the 70s? Was it a free-for-all or heavily scripted? Yeah, let's jump into that. What the hell?
Well, first of all, acting with Fred Willard, it's like following someone who refuses to use their turn signals. You have no idea where he's going ever.
Right.
And that was fabulous. Was it heavily scripted? Yes. When we started the show, when Norman Lear decided we're going to do this show, Norman knew, as he knows most things, the talk shows are done 2 a day. You know, Merv used to take 2 a day. Johnny did 1, but a lot of people did 2 a day. So he figured, hey, this is only half an hour. It's not even a 90-minute. We can do 2 a day. Only it'll be scripted. That means these people who were writing half-hour scripts, and bear in mind, most half-hour television scripts take a week for one.
At least.
At least. They would have to write 10 a week.
10 half hours.
Yeah. And the writers were definitely put to the millstone with that. They just could not begin to do it. And so there was one show we were dramatically, well, not dramatically, but 2 minutes short.
Uh-huh.
And Norman Lear said, can you guys improvise something? And Fred and I had just met on the set.
Is that right?
Yeah. This was after about the first 2 weeks, and he said, can you improvise something? And so we said, sure, and we just said, why don't I say that, you say that, okay. And we ended up about 18 or 20 minutes over. And they liked it enough that they cut back some of the other stuff. So from then on, it was more bullet points. That what I would know is your guest today is Kevin Pollak. Kevin claims to have been abducted by people from Mars, he and his girlfriend. Apparently, all they wanted to do was talk to the girlfriend, but not about her, but about Kevin. That's all you need to know. You know what I'm saying? And so we'd have that much information, and then we could just go with that.
They'd give you a funny setup.
Right.
And you guys would execute. Yeah, I can't believe you met on the set just because
It was kismet.
The chemistry, which is, I imagine, more important than the individual parts when you've got the two of you each show. There's just no way to fake that, and there's no way to force it. It happens or it doesn't.
And it's an absolute tangible commodity, too. I mean, we did a thing, it's been 30 years.
Yeah.
And last winter, no, 2 winters ago, we were asked to go to San Francisco to this comedy fest and to recreate it in a club. They just said, we're just going to show 25 minutes of clips, and then you guys come out. And if you could do 10, 15 minutes in character, and I just, oh my God, you're talking about something 30 years ago. And then we'll do Q&A. I said, okay, well, we'll fake something. It took 90 seconds, tops, to fall right back into it.
Oh my God.
Right into it.
After
Fred and I
30
were
years.
right there. We brought people up from the audience as our guests, etc. And then left the stage, came back 5 minutes later for Q&A. And I realized why we fell right back into it is because there was no difference in the characters between who we really are and those characters.
Right.
There was no acting involved.
It really wasn't even performing.
Yeah. I am a pompous ass, and he is an idiot.
Those of you scoring, that's I'm a pompous ass and he's an idiot. Oh man.
No, but we got right back into it. It's a palpable thing, and you've had people you work with like that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
That you just instantly, oh my God, with him or with her, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there is something about if you ever played tennis, they always say play with a better player, raises
Right.
the level of your game. But in performing arts, it's play with someone that you admire, and guess what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, the level of your game will instantly.
Absolutely.
Your sphincter will tighten, and
That's
suddenly
exactly
you'll
right.
think funnier.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true.
As I attempted to display in the opening introduction.
Which was quite good.
It's going to be framed. Okay, so the inception of Fernwood Tonight is something that I was always curious about, and I couldn't find any information on it, other than the fact that who had created it. But I didn't know if he had seen you on Mary Hartman and said to you straight up, please do this. Or I didn't know what the situation was.
I had never acted in anything unless you want to count my draft physical. And I had been reading for things when I decided that the road giveth and the road taketh away. I'm going to try to be an actor or something. And
All the kids are doing it.
right. And had been excused from most readings before even finishing the paragraph.
Seriously, though?
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 times, etc. And meanwhile, I had gone in to see Norman Lear about possibly writing on Mary Hartman. And we had a lovely meeting. I liked him a lot. He's a wonderful guy. And afterward he said, we don't need any writers, but it's been nice meeting you. 6 months later, I'm in the middle of a mix on an album and a bottle of Courvoisier. and about halfway through both, and I get a call, you're going to read for Mary Hartman tomorrow. And I thought, well, I might as well just finish the Courvoisier because I'm not going to get it anyway, and that's my history. And lo and behold, I got it.
Right.
Yeah, I was under development to NBC at the time, and they loaned me out to Mary Hartman for 4 months. So I worked on that show for 4 months.
Playing, of course, the hilarious wife abuser.
A wife abuser. I was killed at the end of my 4 months with an aluminum sectional Christmas tree goes right through me. And
All for laughs, by the way.
Yes, exactly. And so now I'm off that show. The next day, NBC said, you know what, we're really not going to do anything. You can go on and continue on. Well, now I'm dead. So I said to Norman, I said, has anybody ever asked to come back as their twin brother? And Norman said, everyone asks to come back as their twin brother. And so he said, but I do have an idea. He says, the only problem is, he said, I want to do it in front of a live audience. And Mary Hartman was done as a studio shoot, no audience. And he said, and I just don't know if you're the one. And so I thought, well, talk about Brer Rabbit in the Briar Patch. I've been doing live concerts for the last 15 years. So I put together a special evening at the Roxy on Sunset with my band, a one-shot evening. And they were nice enough to give me the booking. And invited Norman so he could see me in front of an audience.
You set it up just for him.
Yeah, and it went surprisingly well.
That was an all or nothing opportunity.
Yeah, it went about half an hour into it. I waited till there was like a really big laugh or something, etc. At which point I just completely broke everything, stood up and said, Norman, do I have the fucking job or not?
No, you didn't.
Yes. Norman says, you have the job, keep going. And that was
wow.
And that's how the show got to be made.
That is called creating your own destiny.
Or killing it. Yeah.
Yes, well, there's no, you got to be in it to win it.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So that's how that happened.
Oh, wow. All right, so at that point, you've got the job, even though you're not sure what the job is.
Exactly.
And so his discussions with you that you're going to do a nightly half-hour talk show that, if I may, as others have described it, will be purposely lame. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
It was, well, first of all, you don't think, I mean, intuitively, you don't think comedically lame.
Right.
No, what you do is you say, I would like to keep it very, very low budget. I would like to keep it extremely local, and we had been having success with Mary Hartman, which was basically sequestered in a very small town in Ohio.
Right.
And we said that this show should come from there. And the host should be a guy who thinks he's the Johnny Carson of Fernwood, Ohio.
Yes.
And what would that be? My
Local.
first guest tonight's the water commissioner, wonderful man, bring him on out. A lot of water out there, folks. You know, and you bring him out, and it's the water commissioner. It's nothing, it's nobody.
Yeah.
And so that thought I just loved.
Well, the thing that struck those of us who followed it from the get was this ego you talked about. The character who is his own biggest fan, but I mean, I hadn't seen it done to perfection like that until so many years later when Ricky Gervais did the original version of The Office.
Oh, it's fabulous.
There was this blown up, inflated character who...
There is a similarity of character there, yeah.
Well, just in the terms of...
Yeah.
Of nailing that guy that we all know who is wildly confident and unbelievably stupid at the same time.
Aggressively stupid.
Aggressively stupid, as you call it.
Yeah.
Which is such a great moniker because it uses less words, first of all.
How are we for time?
But that was the key, yes. That sense of you just couldn't take your eyes off him. You just couldn't believe, even though he's introducing the water commissioner, it's as if he's got Steve and Edie coming out.
Yeah.
And oh my.
And occasionally the writers later on, when they would come up with guests, I'm not saying we did this without writers. We had writers,
Sure.
but they were coming up. I would have, like, Alan Thicke was one of the writers. And he would come up and say, got a terrific thing for you tomorrow. He said, we got this grandmother who wears a miniskirt, tap dances, and yodels at the same time. And I'd say, okay, let's get rid of the miniskirt, the tap dancing, and the yodeling. But if you've got a grandmother, that sounds great. And that's what we tried to do, was to try to bring it down to that small town thing. Like, one of our most successful things was we had an episode where the segment was called Talk to a Jew. And what happened was,
Remember this?
Mr. Rothschild from New York City had been pulled over by the state trooper doing 65 in a 60 zone outside of Fernwood, and noticed the name on the license. We don't get too many people like that here. Thought rather than pay the ticket, why not do something for you folks here at home? We can bring him on, open our mics up. Anybody out there who would like to actually talk to a real Jew? We actually have one here in Fernwood, Ohio. And he just sat there. Just sat there.
But who was this guy really?
An actor. I forget his name, unfortunately. But we just sat there, and Fred and I looked at each other, and we looked at him, we'd smile, and there was a live phone right there, never rang.
No.
And until finally, just before commercial break, the phone did ring, and it was someone trying to find out when Barbra Streisand's new movie was coming out.
because all the Jews would know that.
Yeah. And that was the extent of that. I mean, but it was so much fun to be able to take very low-ball things like that and expand them.
Yeah, it is the small, little, tiny things when you commit to them that become so memorable.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, God.
And it couldn't have been done without Fred. Fred was just the most amazing.
Yeah. Well, he had a sense of marvel and the curiosity of a 4-year-old seemed to be one of his tricks.
And he could
in his
say
bag.
the blatantly obvious in such a way that it would be the most original statement you've ever heard. We had a war veteran on once who had actually, he was talking about his history in World War II, but it turned out he actually joined well after the war had been finished and was in the band. Okay, but at any rate, right then Fred's just listening attentively to all his stories, and he says, you know, excuse me for interrupting here, he said, but I just had this thought. Back then, if you killed a German, you were a hero. Boy, you do it now, you're in a lot of hot water. And it was just this kind of, yeah. And that was who he was, and it was just the best.
Yeah.
Loved him.
Oh, my. That is a priceless example. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. We have another, we love to throw these things at the guests without any prior knowledge, but
Okay.
another thing we do on the show is called a Tweet 5 because it comes from Twitter. And the Tweet 5 is a rapid-fire, this or that, Coke or Pepsi series of questions.
Good.
We have a little graphic that goes with the Tweet 5 because we had Dave Keckner on the show when we suggested he do a Tweet 5. And he did that, and we thought it was the most ridiculous thing we had seen and decided to make a graphic out of it. This one comes from, all right, I'm just going to say it, @Cockamamie.
Okay.
Cockamamie. Tweet 5. Okay, so it's this or that. There are no wrong
All right.
answers. Number 1, donuts or pie?
Pie.
Ellen or Roseanne?
Roseanne.
FM or AM?
FM.
Mr. Right or Mr. Mom?
Mr. Mom.
Mustard, yellow or Dijon?
Dijon.
I think we see the theme here that this person has created. You were, in fact, Mr. Mustard in the Clue movie.
Colonel.
Colonel, excuse me. Mr. Mustard was a neighbor of mine that I've discussed on the show, and he is
Mr.
forever
Mustard.
embedded in my. It's that molary cheese thing with Mr.
Relish
Mustard.
the thought.
Yeah, I do indeed. And then, of course, Mr. Right and Mr. Mom, FM and AM. You were in the movie FM, no? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was that the first movie you did?
First one ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what was that experience like? Because you had come from television, and the notion of stumbling into that career must have been incredible
Well, I was
enough.
playing a disc jockey who was pretty much, again, self-infatuated, etc. So that was a little easier, and it was that was a lot of fun.
It must have been.
Yeah, I'd never done a film, and then I think I started to really think of myself as some sort of actor at that point.
Was that it, though?
Something that I have certainly disillusioned myself about.
But there is something about being on the set of a film.
Yeah.
Were you invited to participate in this film, as opposed to auditioning at that point? They just called up and asked your agent?
What happened was I actually read for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I had decided at that point in time, after having done Fernwood and Mary Hartman, that I should study acting.
Oh, really?
There might be something to this. And so I went to Joan Darling's class. I took one class on a Wednesday night. Thursday morning I had a reading, and I went in and got the part, and I never went back to class. But I had to read for that, and I got it with a reading.
Oh, my goodness. It seems
Surprised
like,
me.
Yeah, it's a much better success.
I think it was, I went cheap.
I see.
They got me cheap.
Yeah. I'm sure that was the reason they hired you.
It's like sort of almost like Taft-Hartley is your agent. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I never heard it put that way. You have had over the years, your dossier suggests, some gem and well-remembered quotes. One that I've been misquoting for about 30 years, because there's so many times in life and in my career where it just screams appropriate. I had been misquoting it as show business was like high school with money, but in fact it is show business is like high school except you get paid.
That's not, you are correct, and your dossier is incorrect.
So I was correct.
You are correct.
Show business is
It's
like high school with money. That was just something that came out of you one day? Because I
Yeah.
will tell you, when you break down the clicks, the Mr. Popularity, the people with
Absolutely.
no intelligence getting
Absolutely.
ahead, the gossip,
Absolutely.
every step of the way.
Absolutely.
And by the way, it wasn't until I heard that saying that finally there was a way to label all this insanity and all
Yeah.
this ridiculousness,
Yeah.
and there's no justice, there's no
Yeah.
rhyme or reason.
It's like I heard one the other day, someone said politics is show business for unattractive people.
Well, yes.
And that made sense to me, too.
Well, yeah, they had been kissing cousins for quite a while.
Yeah.
That produced these unattractive people. All right, one of our favorites here, and a dear friend not only of the show, but of some of us who work on the show, myself included, at Elaine Ewing. My Martin Mull favorites are character. Is this meant to be a tweet 5, or is this just her observation?
No, she's listing her favorites, and then she's asking of his favorites.
Oh.
I edited that, and I could not have made it more clear, but that's okay.
No, but I'd like to
You just
include
go
you
ahead.
nonetheless.
Yes. Thank you for explaining it.
Thanks for explaining
Thanks
your
for
work.
explaining your clarity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Garth painting, Alarum song, Jesus is easy.
You're saying it wrong.
Well, I'm
Let me
saying
do
it. Why don't you help me instead of
Her
criticizing?
favorite character is Garth. Her
Okay.
favorite
Okay.
painting is Alarum.
Alarum.
Her favorite song is Jesus is Easy.
Co-star Mary Kay Place. What was his favorite character
Jesus,
painting
Mary
song
and
co-star?
Joseph.
Thank you. That was well put, by the way. So her favorite character is Garth, as it's been explained to me now. Of yours. Now, Garth had a twin brother, of course.
Garth was
Barth
was the wife beater.
was the wife beater.
Yeah, Barth was the Fernwood Tonight guy, and I would say that would probably be my favorite character.
Yeah, for the reason of what happened on
Yeah,
Fernwood Tonight
yeah.
and whatnot. Favorite painting of yours?
Impossible to say. There are corners and parts of each one that I like that I'm really not even responsible for, that just kind of magically happened. But as far as One of my favorite paintings is a wonderful painting by Edward Manet of the Déjeuner sous l'herbe. I love that painting.
Right.
I
Okay,
like Matisse's Piano Lesson, too.
Do you?
Yeah, beautiful painting.
right.
Extraordinary painting.
But of yours is impossible. How do you even know how many of them there are?
Of my paintings?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I know in the last 20 years or so, I'm probably have generated anywhere from 8 to 15 paintings a year.
Right.
So, and that now requires math,
Yes.
which is not my strong
We'll
suit.
leave that to Jamie and Elaine.
Yeah.
Favorite song, Jesus is Easy.
I don't know. I don't have a real favorite song of mine. That was a gospel song. But,
Was it?
yeah.
All right.
What was it? I tried yoga. I couldn't do it. I tried macrobiotics. I couldn't chew it. I blew it. And Scientology made a fool of me, so now I'm back to thinking things that I thought when I was 3. Jesus is easy. Just get down on your knees. He's going to listen to your every prayer. Jesus is easy. Just get down on your knees. He's everywhere. Jesus Christ is everywhere. That was the lyric to that song.
Yeah.
There were a number of them. There was one I wrote. No, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't pick it.
Favorite co-star, Mary Kay Place. Well, other than Fred Willard, who we spoke of, I don't know how it gets much better than Mary Kay Place.
It doesn't get better than Mary Kay Place, but if I had to just go anywhere on tour doing a 2-person show with anyone, it would be Fred.
Yeah.
But Mary Kay is one of the most delightful people on the planet.
Spectacular talent.
Yes, extraordinary.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Elaine, and thank you, Jamie, for laying it out so perfectly so that only a monkey could not understand it. And once again, I proved myself to be said monkey. All right, so let's talk a little bit about when Fernwood Tonight becomes America Tonight, because, well, rather than the fans' perspective, what is the sense behind the scenes for you? I mean, you had created an audition situation on basically your home turf, which was a stage. You stood up in the middle of said show and said, "Do I have the job, God damn it," or whatever curse word you used.
Yeah.
Then you get the job. Then it's on 5 nights a week.
Right.
What does the network think of this show?
It was not a network.
Right,
It
right.
was syndicated.
But still, there's an entity. No?
Yes.
Right.
They were pleased because it was at the top. It was in top 5, if not number 1, in most markets in its time slot. That said,
The time slot was?
late at night, 11 o'clock, the revenues that could be gotten from the K-Tel and Popio pocket fishermen, which were the kind of sponsors, would not defray the cost of this show. So it was a loss leader.
Right.
So even though it was winning all of its time slots, it still wasn't making enough money to pay for itself, so it had to go down.
You'd think they'd figure out a way to sell to better...
That was Fernwood Tonight. So Norman felt strongly enough about it, he went into his own pocket to fund America Tonight for 2 reasons. Number 1, he felt strongly about the show and thought it should keep going. Number 2, the reason for the change of venue to Altacoma, California, the unfinished furniture capital of the world, was because we had so many people that wanted to be on the show who were known
famous
entities.
Right.
You know, when you get the Carol Burnett's and Billy Crystals and Robbins and people like that. So we had to have a conceit that would allow for that.
Right.
And the conceit was that we were damn near the airport. and that a lot of flights were delayed, and we would be able to get Charlton Heston over here before his flight leaves, et cetera. Lucky us, et cetera. And that was our conceit, and that was America Tonight.
Right.
Essentially the same show.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was the same show in the sense that the cast was the same and the characters were the same.
Yeah, and the budget was the same.
And I was trying to remember the transition, if you explained it by saying we were run out of Fernwood, or that we've become a success and they've moved us to this other place.
I can't recall either.
But I imagine your character, Barth's ego, would have been that clearly we've been
yeah, as far as being
elevated.
run out of town, I know that there was a running thing during both shows that my character did have some rather telltale Polaroids of him and a young girl in Florida. But that I don't know whether that had anything to do with the moving of the show or not. It was never really explained, or it never really manifested into anything. things.
And American Tonight, they kept that in syndication as well.
Yes.
I mean, I'm wondering why he didn't approach a network. I guess there was no way to compete with Carson, or
Probably that.
Yeah.
And also, I think a lot of the stuff we were doing maybe was a little too rough for. I mean, we were deprogramming Catholic priests on the air and stuff
Yes.
like that, claiming that they were in cults.
Well, when I mentioned at the top that if your interest was alternative comedy, then there were certainly more surreal and bizarre things happening on Fernwood Tonight than Saturday
Yeah.
Night Live.
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live was a intellectual version of slapstick most often, compared, in my mind, even at the time, let alone looking back on it. But even at the time, at a fairly young age, I remember thinking, does anyone know I'm watching this? There was that sense of alternative.
Yeah, we were more in bed with, I think, SCTV
Yeah.
than Saturday Night Live. There was like an overriding concept from frame one to the end credit, and as opposed to Saturday Night Live would go into a sketch and out again, and then to a musical guest and out. It was a variety show,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
And ours was not a variety show. Ours was more one big character sketch. So.
Yeah, and I remember the process of wrapping my brain around what the hell is it that I'm seeing. It's passing itself off as a talk show, initially with these guests that no one's ever heard of because they are from this small town. But there was a sense, the way it was carried off, that it was scripted, that it was in fact a series, the way that I knew a scripted series to be, which meant I kept waiting to get to for the cameras and the characters to take them off the stage and into their backstage lives, a la, say, a Larry Sanders many years later. But it continued to just be that talk show.
Yeah,
So
we had toyed with that idea and decided against it. We wanted to just keep the conceit, keep it out there, because we had people that did not know
absolutely.
whether it was real or not. We had a thing one night, you know how the ubiquitous phone number you always have in show business, the 555 exchange, 555-2165. And it's always, even in great crime dramas, that's what's written on the paper. It drives me nuts. But at any rate, we had a thing on the No Frills Health Plan that we were talking to the doctor tonight, and it's a wonderful situation whereby they wait until 30 or 40 people all have the same malady. They can do the surgery kind of like an assembly line kind of thing. We have a used flower shop. We have a guy, surgeries that are done by a nurse, but she's in walkie-talkie contact with a doctor on a golf course, so any problems come up, you're covered, et cetera, and the guy is promoting this thing. And we ran the 555 number. Well, it turned out, for some reason, that night, that was a live number in Miami. And they said they had literally hundreds of people calling up and trying to sign up for the No Frills Health Plan. So that means people were buying this as legitimate.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, my.
And that, to me, I thought was a part of the charm of it, that you don't,
Well,
there's no wink.
I remember being confused, and I remember, first of all, I was, I think, afraid to tell my parents that I was watching it. And then
You were how old?
77, I was, oh gosh, I was older than I thought. Isn't that funny? I remember feeling, in my memory of sitting there watching it, I felt as though I were a
6?
teenager. No, a teenager in high school, but in fact I was out of high school by then. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of the sense of being caught by my parents watching it, that's just sort of histrionics and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the sense of it was that this is something that I'm not even sure I understand what's going on initially, and then you know the ego kicks in of course I know, I get it. I get what they're doing.
But you also feel sometimes when you have something like that, like you're an elitist kind of thing, that you're the one. Lily Tomlin told me once she was up doing a concert up in San Francisco, and a guy came up to her after the concert, thinking this was a compliment. He said, "Lily," he said, "your stuff is so friggin' hip." I swear to God, I think I was the only one laughing.
Right. You don't want to hear that.
And that was supposed to be a compliment. That's the last thing you want to hear as a comedic performer.
Oh, I love those. They'll come up after the show. Well, I got it.
Yeah.
I thought you were hilarious. I mean, we've all had the bad nights where the crowd really stinks, and you assume only a handful of people are giving a damn, but you don't want to hear about it afterwards. No. I'll tell you what, though, I've talked to other performers, and the opposite of that is true also, which is the audience sucked. and therefore your performance is thrown off by their timing because it's all
Right.
gauged on their response. And then you'll come backstage afterwards, and friends will be there saying, their reaction will be to a great show that you did with a great audience, and you felt you really haven't earned the accolades that are now being given.
Right.
And and they're so genuine.
Yeah.
When they say, "What a great show," and all you want to do, and it took me years to stop trying, is to convince them how much better you actually are than what they just experienced.
Yeah, I didn't have my
No. It usually goes way better than that.
Yeah.
Really? We thought it was terrific. No.
Exactly.
This audience was horrible.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, it's a very strange thing that happens between the audience and the comedian. Also, I don't know what your feelings were or are if you were to do 4 shows over a weekend in one town, face 4 different audiences in the same venue, in the same area of the world, with virtually the same act, 4 wildly different responses.
Absolutely.
That is the truly living evidence that it is like all other subjective art form.
Yeah. Well, it also has to do with that. You have to also then take that little bite of humility,
Yes.
and say it may not always just even be what I was doing. It could be just them. I remember at one point I got a job opening for Liza Minnelli on the road. Now Liza had a 35-piece orchestra, say 8 dancers, 4 background singers, and a crew. I had me, my furniture, and a guitar, and we were playing large halls, at least large for me at that time, let's say 3,500 to 5,000 seats. And I was thinking, this is not a fair fight. It's just this schmuck up here with his guitar and 5,000 people.
Yeah.
White flag. But then
And
I
also
said,
all those pieces
but then
behind
it
you.
occurred to me, Kevin, is that these 5,000 people, yes, they're anonymous, but they are also made up of individuals. And those individuals are all people who have saved their bowling money winnings, their $50 that they won off of somebody, their babysitting earnings, nickels and dimes in a cookie jar to save up enough to go see Liza tonight. They are so pumped to be entertained that all you have to do is become a parabolic mirror and put their energy back on them. And depending on how much they want to be entertained, that will change the show more than what you do.
Wow. Wow.
In fact, that's when I got the idea. I used to start my show. I'd come out, I'd sit down, and I'd say, have a terrific show for you this evening, and there's no sense rushing it. And I would just sit there and have a drink and a cigarette and do nothing for as long as I possibly could and get away with it. And they would start laughing, and they would start entertaining. This is so funny. Oh, my God. There was nothing funny.
No.
It was just they were so primed to laugh and have a good time that my absurdity,
The audacity.
it just got them, and I think I'm right about that.
Yeah. Oh, I think you are too. Did you ever see Barry Levinson and Craig T. Nelson as a comedy team in the late 60s?
No, I know Barry very well, but I never saw him.
Ask him about him and Craig T. Nelson as a comedy team, because he told me one bit that they did that sounds a little similar to what you're
really?
describing with the cigarette. Not as an opening, but they did a bit. They like yourself, felt like they wanted to set these folk singers on fire in terms of their appreciation for the art form. But they would go on stage in between the folk singers and the coffee houses. And it got to a point where nobody knew the audience didn't know who any of the performers were. So finally they had it, and they figured out a way that they could personally make fun of these folk artists. And they went on stage with guitars, and they said, "Hi, thanks very much. We're Henry and Dave," whatever the names were, "and we want to sing you our new song that we just wrote called She's Mine. Ready?" And they look at each other, and then they'd hit one note and then stop and go ding, 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 ding.
Jeez,
Ding, 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 ding.
Oh.
And they readdressed the microphones, and they did that for 9 minutes. 9 minutes.
Love it.
9 minutes, where they
Love
would
it.
start and ding, 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 ding. Ding, ding, ding. Now, Barry told me that it was a 9-minute bit. And he said the first 3 minutes, similar to the smoking, I'm going to take my time.
Yeah.
Let's not rush it. The audience could not believe the audacity and were laughing uncontrollably
Yep.
at the absurdity that was
Yep.
unfolding. He said the middle 3 minutes of this 9-minute piece, the audience went away. They were, we get it.
Yeah.
We're over it,
Yeah.
and so should you be.
Yes, surprise us now again.
And then they could not believe that it was continuing,
Right.
so that the final 3 minutes,
Gets even more fun.
they came back
Yeah.
and laughed even harder than the first
Yeah.
3. And he said, but in that middle 3, one of us invariably would look at the other one and go, we're going to bail.
Well, see, there are 2 great big concepts here, and the middle part is the vacation between the 2 concepts. The first concept is what we're doing. Isn't that absurd? The second big concept is we are still doing it.
Can you believe it?
And there's a window in between those 2.
Right.
That's where you lose them for a minute, but then you come back. I worked with Andy Kaufman a couple times, and he used to sing 100 bottles of beer on the wall all the way to the end.
Talk about losing a crowd.
And he also started reading Tender is the Night
Right.
once on stage, and did not stop. And people finally just left, etc. But that's phenomenal to me.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like a Warhol sleep movie or something.
Yes. Oh, my. All right, sir. One of our favorites here also is at Martha_S. This, what part of this tweet 5 will you not understand? Is Jamie's question to me. Well, just the words tweet 5 I find helpful. All right, so this is in fact tweet 5. David.
T5.
Thank you.
T5. T5 forever now.
Just was looking at the clock that they had moved on us. Does it feel like we're over an hour now? It probably does
Oh, yeah.
to you. All right, so the this or that concept: Mayo or Miracle Whip? Mayo or Miracle Whip?
Mayo.
R&B or bluegrass?
Oh.
Aha,
Whoa.
see?
I've been playing a lot of bluegrass lately, but I can't separate the 2 of them. Those are my two favorites.
Right. There's no first and second.
No.
Watch Halloween in the Barracks, Aluminum, Our Shiny Friend.
I don't remember Halloween in the Barracks. Aluminum, Our
Okay.
Shiny Friend was one of
Halloween in the Barracks is in quotations. How did I mess that up?
Aluminum, Our Shiny
Watch
Friend was a
Halloween
fake movie
in the
title.
Barracks or Aluminum, Our Shiny Friend.
Yeah, remember I told you earlier about the film Lincoln, the Car, the Man in the Tunnel?
Yeah.
That was done by these fake filmmakers who also did Aluminum, Our Shiny Friend.
Right.
A PBS film.
But you don't remember the
No, I don't.
Halloween in the Barracks?
No.
Okay. So then it's an easy choice. Mm-hmm. Jared Richter, Sigmar Polk.
Richter.
Use photos from Life magazine or Look? Use photos, I imagine, to inspire you some of the painting?
Yeah. I tend to go more for Look because they're usually a little trashier.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, a nice segue that Martha_S has provided us, and I thank you for that, Martha. We started off talking about you're studying at Rhode Island School of Design. Mm-hmm. And as you started to have this wonderful career in front of we, the fans, no knowledge whatsoever for a lot of us that you had been painting and that these paintings had been seen in galleries across the land. At some point, the opportunities that go with an artist who has as many solo exhibits as you have, I imagine starts to be more rewarding than high school with money.
Well, I would have to say yes, but there's a reason for that, and that is that even if it is at the Acme Theater, an evening with Kevin Pollak all alone on stage, you are not working alone. You have a sound man, you have a light man, you have a roadie, you have somebody doing makeup, someone making sure your suit was pressed, etc. It is a joint effort. And to me, that's the fun of show business, is working with other people. Painting is absolutely, it is your own ass on the cross. And consequently, when it does go well, the rewards are definitely, again, yours alone.
You get all the credit and all the blame.
You get all the credit and all the blame, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and it is something that I have been pursuing actively for, well, going on 64 years.
Right.
So, since I was 3.
And let's go through a couple of the works of yours, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
We've put together a few things, and then we'll discuss where people tell us a little as they come up.
This is from a recent show in New York at the Stellan Home Gallery. These are all 9 by 9 inch paintings done on board, oil paintings, and they were all basically using. I work from collages that I make from 1960 circa nudist magazines, and then piece them together because I just remember that whole period in my life of. This was the, oh my God, it was the mother lode if you could find one of those when you were a 14-year-old boy or 12-year-old boy.
Sure.
My God, look what I found.
While people were wasting
and then
time.
I paste them up and make different things. Like there are 2 or 3 different images in that I put together. And then I just love the idiot process of sitting there and painting them as photorealistically as possible.
Well, that's just it. It's all oil on canvas.
Those are actually on board, but most of them are on canvas, yeah.
So many of them look like photographs. So oh, that's my favorite there.
Yeah, some of this housing is I go around with my cheap little, I like disposable cameras.
Do you?
Yeah, as I told you earlier, I've never used a computer and I can't do anything modern day. So I use those cameras you get at the drugstore and then you just throw them away. And I take pictures of housing around Santa Monica and use that in my pictures.
Your mom insists on that as well?
No, that's on canvas. This is on canvas. This is a show in London right now.
And you said something about the painting the wallpaper around that.
Yeah, I like the moronics of painting wallpaper too. That looks like it's on its side.
If you were to hang it sideways, we just wanted to let people know
Yeah.
that was an option.
Yeah. And now there's like using that same lady in another image that.
And the houses, you took these photographs yourself just
Yeah, that's a
driving
large
around.
canvas. That's about 3 feet wide by 9 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
And that was one of the things I was doing when I was doing the 4 seasons, which I think we also have. That was trying to combine 2 seasons in one.
All right, let's slow down the 4 seasons and have you comment on them. You decided to paint the 4 seasons in Los Angeles.
Right, where there are none, where there are no seasons whatsoever. So these are, and again, populated with people from 1960s nudist magazines, except for that's my brother there on the right. But these are 50 by 70 inches. These are all oil on linen.
And what did you call this one?
That would be Spring, where the young man's fancy lightly turns to thoughts of love.
Uh-huh. Okay. And what house is that?
I don't know.
That's a random one.
Some house near the airport.
Uh-huh.
This is summer.
No story behind summer?
Well, more the heat and just kind of melting into the street. But
I'll say that's the valley.
yeah. It certainly looks like it. This is fall, and the reason why it's fall, again, exact same time and temp, but the hills are on fire. Which would be,
That's how you know it's fall.
yeah, it's Los Angeles. The place is burning down. Some idiot with his matches is out there. And last would be winter, and it's winter because you do need a hat and gloves.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I wonder if there's any correlation between the man bending and
Well,
the,
he's taking
and the
his
dog.
socks off. He's getting ready to join her for dinner. I think
I was wondering if it had something to do
they're
with
having what in Britain is known as a joint, a large piece of meat there.
Oh, man. And you were on your way to London for a show, and the cloud from the volcano.
Yeah, couldn't go.
Didn't plan on that,
No,
did you?
natural disaster.
Yeah.
But the show went on without me, so.
That stinks. But are you going to be going to the one in Switzerland, is it?
I think I am. Yeah, this is for some reason the 7 Deadly Sins, which I keep trying to do these series that have been done to death, like the 4 Seasons and the 7 Deadly Sins, and in fact, you have the 7 Deadly. Right
I
there.
would like to show the 7 Deadly Sins because, again, it's not just the remarkable recreation of a photograph. It's what you do then within that I find. Let's use the ISO camera, if we may.
That's envy.
And then we'll have you list off the 7 deadly sins once we're able to join this camera and the TriCaster.
Oh, it's so easy when you know the language.
There it is.
Yeah, that's envy.
From
That's actually Steve Martin owns that.
Steve Martin owns this particular one. And what size is the one that he owns?
That's 30 by 40. That's again oil on linen.
Okay.
He described the whole series, and I think he's right. He says it's obtuse, which I thought, or oblique. That's what it was. But that's what I wanted to do, was kind of take the 7 deadly sins and put them in the most pedestrian terms.
All right.
To the point where 7 deadly sins are things that we actually do every day, that there's nothing, cardinal about them, etc. So this would be lust.
Let's take a look at lust. I love that one. Pedestrian to you, but fantastic to me.
This is wrath.
Wrath.
And there's no wrath like feeling unjustifiably ill.
Oh boy, isn't that true? Boy, that's wholly original in terms of our
Sloth.
thoughts of wrath. And then you have this for sloth. He's going nowhere fast.
Well, he owns it.
Yep. Again.
This would be greed. Just some sort of air invasion there. Someone said, "Is that Cheney?" No, it is not.
No. It's his great-great-grandfather.
It's a chain-alike.
It was the first Cheney to shoot a friend in the face.
Yeah. This would be pride.
Pride, as he's wearing.
He has 2 goats. He's quite proud of them. That's actually the house I grew up in Ohio.
Oh, that's the one with the slight smell of manure on the boots.
Right. We had the right side, and Forrest and Ina Fish rented the left side.
Is that right?
That was their name, Forrest and Ina Fish.
You almost had a Jew in town with the name
Almost.
like Fish.
It wasn't Fishman.
No,
unfortunately.
exactly.
It was just plain fish.
Or
Just
fish bird. And
and
this
this-
has got to be
gluttony.
Gluttony. So, in this case, for example, you talk about using photographs from magazines.
No, those aren't from magazines. What
Right.
happened was my wife, who is computer literate, someone in the family has to be,
Thank
and
goodness.
is my daughter, was surfing around and found that there are people selling off their family photos on eBay. So you can get Marge and George Rogers from Topeka, Kansas. This is when we went to Niagara Falls here. You'd think these would be heirlooms. You'd think these are things to be treasured in books. They're selling them at $200, 200 pictures in a box. You can buy them all. And when you go through, and I don't know what it is, there's something about, I'll get a stack of 100 of them.
Yeah.
And I'll go, oh, no, uh-oh.
Right. They just speak to you.
Oh my God. and occasionally, and there's just something about that. And these are pieced together from the Oh My Gods.
Right. So you've started collecting these from eBay?
Yeah.
And how many?
Do I have?
Yeah.
I have several hundred.
Right. That's fascinating.
Yeah. It's just great because
going through other-
it makes it so voyeuristic.
Yes, I was just saying, going through other people's sort of home movies, in this case, photographs.
Exactly right.
Oh, wow.
But it also allows you
To be inspired by
as a painter to just be basically not a pure painter, but there's a lot of nuts and boltedness about painting, that just getting things right, that essentially everything is an apple, and it allows you to really objectify what you're doing. To work on it so much better if you have no idea if these people are dead, alive, or anything. And also, on the other flip side of that, it allows you to invent all sorts of stories and narratives while you're doing it.
Well, that's the thing. As a storyteller, first and foremost, how much does that inform your work when you sit down to do a new piece? Is there a story in mind you want to tell?
No.
Or it's inspired by...
It grows as in the doing.
That's the part that I'm actually quite curious about as a writer who's created fiction, starting with a blank page and creating a world and characters that never existed before. That's as close as I've ever got to, I'm going to live and die by my own design and my own thoughts and imagination.
But don't you find that page 1 comes directly from you? Page 2 owes as much to page 1 as it does to you.
Yes, of course.
And that starts to become an increasing ratio as you get onto page 99 of a film script, whereby you really have very little to do with it. You've created actually flesh and blood people and lines and dialogues and situations where you become the artisan, not the artist.
Wow, I never looked at it that way, and now you've almost ruined the experience for me.
But no, I think it's
I
a
know.
wonderful experience. I mean, because there should be no delineation. You think about the cathedral at Chartres, for instance, where somebody put in the footers.
Right.
Same guy that did the gargoyles.
Wow. Holy
So
crap.
what do? I work with stone, as opposed to I'm a sculptor.
Right.
You know, it's just to me, it's so much hipper.
Yeah, yes, considerably more hip. So, when you started focusing and traveling with your artwork, was there a time when you thought about doing live shows as a performer? Was there? I'm wondering, when you've had such a huge part of your life, because I stopped performing live for about 9 years and focusing on films, and there was a while there where I thought I was done, and I was wrong. And it came back to me in a rush of I missed it so horribly, because I guess for you it might be your artwork, and for me I didn't have something that I was creating on my own, and I had become a gun for hire in film work. And
A very good one, I must say.
thank you. And I participated as much from my own potential as I could in that art form, and felt as though I was starving to stand in front of total strangers.
Really?
And yeah. Did that ever occur for you? I was thinking halfway through that maybe the artwork supplanted.
Well, when you think of the genesis of it, the reason I stood in front of an audience to begin with was to pay for my art and my art schooling.
Wow.
And so once now that the art is paying for not only itself but everything else, it is kind of like a huge thank you, and I feel very grateful that I was able to pull the wool over that many eyes for that long. But but the urge, I mean, Steve Martin's gone back out with his banjo act, and Robin went back out and did live shows, and I just think to myself, how can you go back on the road? How can you do that? How could, you know, again, you know, as age has also taken its toll, but I feel it a little bit. I don't want to be, you know, I wonder why Charlie Watts is still playing drums with the Rolling Stones. He looks like Father Christmas out there, you know, for Christ's sake, man. You know, go home, get on the Barca Lounger and watch television.
Right.
But,
well, but you're creating every day. You said you're up at 5 a.m. this morning to paint.
Yeah.
And in terms of living vicariously through one's work.
And you know what? You do have your openings too. When you put your gallery, the gallery puts it up, and then there's a night's festivity where there are people that come around. So if it is that kind of gratification you get from hearing the applause, there's a bit of that at the opening that maybe keeps that wolf away from the door. I mean, but I don't feel the need to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's not for me as much starving for the attention of strangers as much as it was. It was well, just that high you spoke of, that drug of choice of being on a stage and taking the audience on a ride of my choosing.
Yeah.
From beginning to end.
Yeah.
I'll decide where we're going. I'll decide the timing, when to slow it down, when to speed it up, when the cadence and all of it.
Yeah.
The choreography, the editing, all of it. It was that performer's need that wasn't being fulfilled at all in that.
And so you went back out. And, And did it feel like,
It did. And the first thing I realized was, well, I'm not going to do this as often as I thought I might want to. I'm not going to do 35 dates a year. But 15 to 20 sounds pretty great. And if it ends up only being 12, that's great too. And I'm still doing it to this day.
That's great.
And boy, oh boy, you know, there's a part of the on the road aspect of the travel, getting right up real close with the great unwashed C- students that make up this great land of ours, if not the rest of the world. That is a little overwhelming at times. Also, if you have, I have a resume as an actor and pedigree in certain circles. What I don't have is superstar fame. So the good part of that is to be able to walk through an airport unaccosted.
I'm sure you do get stopped.
Well, what the bad part is, when the people stop me, there is a good percentage, I'm going to say as much as 40 sometimes, is, what's that thing I saw you in that was great?
Juana Man.
And as much as I want to say Juana Man, what was that thing I saw you in that I loved?
Yeah.
How could I possibly know?
And then it becomes that guessing
It's a
game.
great statement.
$1 million mystery.
Then it's that great guessing game, right? And it drives us crazy because
I got yelled at once.
And poor Jamie, literally, tell if you don't mind. Please.
I don't remember what airport we were in, but I was watching the luggage and you went into Starbucks.
Right.
And a guy had come up to me and he said, "What have I seen him in?" Meaning Kevin. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what movies you watch. And he's like, just tell me what I've seen him in. And so I started saying, so I think the first thing I said was A Few Good Men, and he went, thank you. Thank you.
Could you imagine? So that's the joy
Yeah.
and stress of my.
Well, I remember once being in Texas at the place where your luggage comes out and the
Yes.
little thing, where it belches out into the merry-go-round there.
Which hasn't
and all of a
changed in
sudden,
60 years, by
I
the
was
way.
standing at mine waiting for it to come down. There was a couple of the others, and the lady just pulled on her husband. She said, "Roy, look, it's 10:30 on 32."
Oh my God.
That's
10:30 on 32.
Yeah.
And you knew
That's-
instantly what she meant.
yeah. That's my second favorite. The other one was the guy that stopped me once and said, Martin Mull, he actually knew who I was. He said, "I got to tell you something." He said, there's two people that make me laugh, man. You and Norm Crosby.
I knew whoever the person was, you did not.
And I just couldn't for the life of me think of what, Norm's a lovely man, but I can't think of what we have in common other than we're both bipeds. That's about it.
That's it. Yeah, you are up.
So you have no idea what these people, what this guy's thinking,
Yeah.
screaming at you.
Yeah. What is that movie that I saw him in? How could
And then,
you possibly answer?
also then it becomes like the list of A Few Good Men. No.
Yeah.
No, that
It's
wasn't
like,
it.
No. House Arrest. No. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
You don't. How many?
What was
got
that thing I
together?
saw you in with the girl?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like
Really?
the description
You've narrowed
too.
it down.
But I like one time I think we were in Harrods in London, and the girl was like, "What was the movie he was in where the children were naughty?" And I was like, House Arrest?
Yeah, and you've narrowed it down to 12.
Yeah.
What was it? Zach Galifianakis had that joke. He said, "Did you see that show on Lifetime the other day about the woman?"
Yeah. How great is he, by the way?
The best.
One of the true original thinkers.
Oh my God! When he said the only good time to ever scream out "I've got diarrhea" is when you're playing Scrabble.
Yeah, he is truly an abstract artist.
Unbelievable.
Who paints beautifully.
Absolutely, I love him. He's
And I feel the same about you, sir, and I can't thank you enough for spending
my pleasure.
your
This has been
Sunday
so much
afternoon
fun.
with us, honestly.
What a ball.
I'm going to spare you the Paris Tyro to me because we had so much fun
Okay.
talking. I'm going to go back to the board here and ask the question here. One last chance for them. At Cheesehead 1976, a fine name indeed. Working as long as you have, is there an actor of your generation you haven't worked with yet that you would like to? For me, when I'm asked this, the list is endless, unfortunately.
Yeah, I couldn't begin to single out.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many people that I have really not done that much, certainly not that much film work. And,
Were there people that inspired you or influenced you in a sense that you not only learned from them and whatnot, were inspired by them, but thought, boy, someday, we haven't talked much about who your heroes were when you were coming up. Mm-hmm. Was there any of those that come to mind?
Well, I actually got to work with one person who was a hero growing up, and that was George Goebel, of all people. I got to work with him. He played Fred Willard's father in The History of White People in America, and that was a high watermark for me. So every now and then you'll meet somebody and go, "Oh my God, I actually met him."
Right.
I met Lou Groza, the place kicker from the Cleveland Browns in the 1950s. That was huge for me. I mean, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never actually thought one day I might work with him?
No.
No. History of White People in America is something that we also hadn't talked about. That was something you co-created with
Alan Rucker.
Alan Rucker. And how did you guys know each other?
Well, I grew up in North Ridgeville, Ohio, and he grew up in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and we were having a lunch. We were drinking at Musso and Frank's once, and started talking about our respective hometowns, and we realized there was a whole white subculture there that just needed to be done. So we decided to do a show called The History of White People in America. Laughed at the title, went in to see Charlie Engle at Universal, armed with only the title, and got a deal to do 2 half hours, which then turned into 2 books and 6 more half hours and a 2-hour movie of the week. It was amazing. It was,
Yeah. Oh, I remember. It was huge.
Yeah.
And the books are still available, obviously.
Yeah, they are indeed.
History of White People in America.
And A Paler Shade of White.
And A Paler Shade of White.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Such influences on me. Again, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
As I said, you've skated on the Paris Tyrant or Me. However, the Larry King game is in your future.
Okay, so I do Larry.
A bad Larry.
Okay.
And then give us that moment where Larry shares something about himself that none of us ever wanted to know, and then go to the phones. This is your camera, sir.
Okay.
You'll be in isolation, the way that Larry loves to.
Okay.
No time or pressure. If you'd like to have a cup of coffee and a cigarette first, that might be funny.
No, I think, let me just, I don't do Larry King.
Perfect.
We had hoped in the last 2 minutes of tonight's show to kind of take a trip down memory lane and talk to an old roommate of mine from college named George, but George apparently is recovering from a surgery, or Georgina, as I guess you'd like to be called now. George, love to have you on when the stitches come out. I know, I'm sorry about the Georgina thing. It's hard for me. I'm sure it's hard for you too. Okay. Hello, Northridgeville, Ohio. You're on the air.
Northridge, Ohio comes into it. Thank you so much for that.
That hurts.
Yes, it actually does to affect his voice. My favorite part might have been, which was proof positive that you often watch Larry's show, when you went ahead and picked up the phone when you called out to the town. That was especially helpful to the bit. Oh, man. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. That will add to the archives.
Oh, good.
On our site, trust me.
And best to you, Georgina.
Yeah, add Georgina. Oh, God. Come on the show when the stitches come out.
Yeah.
Thanks to all of you for tuning in to the chat show number 51 and guest 72 or so, I've been told. We're still up there on the iTunes, staff favorites, picks there on the podcast. We ran number 1 in the staff favorites for 3 weeks in a row, and then the last 3 weeks we've been number 2 in the staff favorites. So we've been in the top 2 staff favorites for 6 long weeks now.
Who's number 1 now?
And that makes me happy. Number 1 should die a horrible death. I don't know. But I do want to thank everyone who worked on the show here. As we've been doing this show live for the last hour and 42 minutes, our crew has been working outside of these walls in this small studio, running the ship, launching the shuttle, as it were. Let's take a look outside to see what they've been up to for the last hour, 42 minutes.
Is this an episode of The Hills?
No. There we go. We actually got to see the artist
I hope Maker adds that to his reel.
work. That is definitely right after
That was good. That was some good acting.
That
on his
was
part.
solid. And I want to thank Emily for the pose. Oh, God bless him out there. Next Sunday, we will be in New York City. The location of where the chat show is going to take place is still being ironed out, as is the guest, which is being shuffled one to the other.
The Levine household.
We are, yeah. We'll do it at the Levine house in New Jersey, and maybe Max Levine will come on the show, Sam's
Absolutely.
brother. And then we'll have a week off on the 13th, and then back with Craig Ferguson, I'm very excited to say, on June 20th. Love him so. More shows to come, and look forward to most of them. Until next show, as always, get out of my face.